2000 to 2010, when the gold price went up sevenfold, the free cash flow per share of the gold miners actually declined.
Hmm.
It was a decade of ridiculous malinvestment of capital. The management teams that presided over that dismal performance, pardon me, have been thanked and excused. But the institutional investors and the management teams themselves have kept the mining companies on a very tight leash with regards to capital deployment. My suspicion is that as the metrics around gold companies' valuations increase in a bull market, and as investor concern about companies' ability to maintain or grow their production increases, then you will see increased investment activity, including increased merger and acquisition activity. So I think what you describe as the calm before the storm is
Yeah.
completely accurate. The Agnicos of the world, the Francos, the Wheatons give you surprising performance in a gold bull market with almost no operational risk. For myself, I bought those names 4 years ago and 5 years ago, so I don't have to buy them now. What I'm doing now is coming down the quality trail, looking for big single mine companies that would make attractive bolt-on acquisitions and ones that are cheap. I need to mention too, Jeremy, that I'm much more willing than most to accept political risk.
Yeah.
So names like West African Resources in Africa, Endeavour Mining in Africa are appealing to me because I'm willing to take political risk and because they're extremely cheap by any metric. I personally, too, am going down into the exploration space because I like to be involved in markets where I don't have much company and very much competition. I wouldn't expect the bull market to expand into the exploration space per se for 18 to 24 months, but I like to be in space before the competition is. I don't think there are any good jurisdictions.
Right.
The worst experience with political risk I've ever had in my life is the People's Republic of California,
Hmm.
which is regarded as a low risk jurisdiction. The best jurisdictions in my life have been Western Australia and Chile. Chile is getting a little worse as it gets richer. They can afford to be stupid. I think all jurisdictions are lousy. I think the government that's the most dangerous is the government that's closest to you.
Yeah.
But there are certain jurisdictions where companies enjoy a lower cost of capital in accordance with a beauty contest. The Fraser Institute in Vancouver publishes a sentiment list around political risk. They
Hmm.
would describe Saskatchewan, Canada, as the lowest risk jurisdiction on the planet, but they give both Quebec and Ontario fairly high marks. They give certain American jurisdictions, Alaska, Wyoming, Nevada, fairly high regard. They're a little tougher on most other jurisdictions. In my own life, Jeremy, what I've learned is that I try to avoid technical risk. In other words, I try to buy good deposits and I grit my teeth with regards to locations. But I
Yeah.
understand that I'm more tolerant of political risk than others. Precious metals bull markets are led by gold, they're led
Hmm.
by the fear buyer. They get kicked off because savers and investors are concerned about the deterioration of the purchasing power of domestic currencies, fiat currencies, in regular savings products. Gold moves first. When the move in gold allows producer margins to expand, the senior gold stocks move next, which is what we've just seen.
Hmm.
At some point in time, the momentum in both gold and gold stocks attracts the generalist investor into the precious metal space. When that happens, perhaps because of its lower unit cost, leadership goes from gold to silver. I've watched this happen 3 times before in my life, and Jeremy,
Yeah.
believe me, you will not need Rick Rule to tell you when it occurs.
Hmm.
Silver is incredibly volatile, both to the upside and the downside. It's the upside that comes next. Uh, as to a squeeze, I think the squeeze comes about, if it comes about, because the trading volume in the futures market is so extraordinary relative to the amount of gold available for good delivery in the physicals market. Many days, single days, the trading market trades 200 times the amount of silver
Hmm.
available for good delivery on the market. The potential for a fairly small number of the futures contracts to hold for delivery and the impact of what that would have on physically available supply could be dramatic. we need to differentiate between the squeeze that we'll likely see and the squeeze we won't see.
Yeah.
There are some silver bugs who suggest that there will be no silver available, and
Hmm.
as a consequence of that, there will be the mother of all short squeezes on the futures market. That won't happen. Silver futures markets are owned and made by the dealers, by the banks.
Yeah.
What will happen in the event that there is a temporary unavailable of metal is that the markets will suspend the contracts and cash settle. That's what will happen.
Hmm.
This will be extremely pleasant for the people who are long and extremely unpleasant for the people who are short. Who are short. But it won't be the sort of incurable market imbalance that many of the silver bulls dare dream for. The physical holder probably in percentage wise benefits the least. The leveraged futures holder maybe more. The silver producer a lot. But the answer to that is yes, yes, and yes. And of course, the penalty is borne by those who didn't participate or heaven help them. There is a real shortage
Yeah.
of decent quality silver companies, and that's been noted in three prior bull markets. My friend Doug Casey described the circumstance where the generalist investor money comes in the silver equity space as trying to siphon Hoover Dam through a garden hose. There just aren't enough. Uh, and the big silver names are becoming less silver centric. The go-to name in the last bull market was, of course, Ross Beatty's entry, Silver Standard, where over 50% of revenues are now gold revenues.
Hmm.
There is still a silver constituency. For those people who would like equity vehicles that are very responsive to the silver price, traditionally those include core mining, Hecla, and First Majestic Silver. For people who want really high quality silver names that are maybe less correlated to the silver market, one likely needs to look south of the border. One looks to Fresnillo, uh, one looks to Peñoles,
Hmm.
one looks to Buenaventura. Among the juniors, we had a great list at the conference. We had Aya Gold and Silver, a great small producer. We had Visla Silver. We had Abra Silver. Very, very, very small, but list of very high quality discoveries.
Hmm.
We could easily be in a 12 to 24-month pause. I think people need to understand that there's a lot of nervousness about a recession. And you can have production tightness in electricity if you have demand weakness in electricity without moving the price. And I think we're seeing this. Longer term, I think that uranium is a total coiled spring. What's important about the uranium equities is increasing prevalence of a term market in uranium rather than a spot market of uranium, so that producers can lock in volume and price for as much as 30 years in the future, which should, over the next 5 years, lower the cost of capital, both debt capital and equity capital. And I don't think one person in 1,000 who is a uranium speculator understands the importance of the term market in uranium. And while we're on the topic of uranium, the quarter that was just released by Cameco rivals the Newmont quarter. It was a
Yeah.
truly spectacular quarter. A quarter that had a lot of things to look at. Great free cash flow, despite the fact that Cameco's average selling price for the quarter was $57 in the spot market where the price exceeded 70.
Hmm.
Well, that means that the short-term contracts roll over in favor of longer-term contracts. There's as much as $20 or $25 in gross selling price. No one knows how much margin. But the second thing it shows is that, at least so far, Cameco has managed the Westinghouse acquisition well, because the contribution of the Westinghouse assets into the Cameco income statement were spectacular. My nervousness about Cameco was always, could they, as miners, manage an engineering, processing, and construction firm? The last three quarters would suggest that the answer to that is a resounding yes. The incredible increase in free cash flow generation at Cameco
Yeah.
tells you probably everything that you need to know about a proxy for the market relative to the price of uranium. I don't think tariffs are necessarily the opportunity. I think Trump is fairly transactional, and
Yeah.
I think that tariffs are really a bargaining chip for him for political power,
Hmm.
which is not a fundamental around the copper market. The fundamental around the copper market is that we as a society have been underinvesting in copper for 30 years. The exploration work that we need to do to increase production needed to happen in the 1990s, and it didn't. So no matter what we do, we're going to have a structural deficit in supply in copper. At the same time that demand is growing very rapidly. Friedland and others talk about Western demand. They talk about data centers. They talk about electric vehicles. But there's a different side of demand, too, that we
Hmm.
need to talk about. There's a billion people on Earth with no access to primary electricity. We're going to solve that problem over the next 20 or 25 years. It's going to take copper to generate the power they need. It's going to take copper to get the power from where it's generated to where they use it. It's going to take copper in their home and in their vehicles to utilize that power. Demand for electrical power is estimated by the International Energy Agency to double in the period 2025 to 2050, and that takes copper. For most investors, they're better off buying beta than buying
Yeah.
alpha, not taking the political risk, but rather buying the best names they can. For
Hmm.
Canadians, that might include Tech Corp. For Americans, that might include Freeport, a great copper producer. Remember that the costs of developing a new copper mine are going up very, very, very rapidly, and that makes existing copper mines much more valuable. One could also look to the senior miners, the BHPs, the Rios, the Glencores, but it's important to note there that while they're important to the copper business, copper is less important to them. They're major multinational mining companies producing a variety of commodities. But as I say, for most investors, they're better off sticking to the best of the best. It's easy in a good market to get a three or fourfold move in a very high quality company without having to take the operational risk that you take when you go into the smaller cap companies on the TSXV.